Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 46. So excited to be back with you all. Thank you for joining me yet again. We have another good one. Today's guest is Michelle Brandt. She is running for the West Ashley Dorchester District 114 seat in the South Carolina State Legislature. She is a Democrat and hoping to unseat Republican incumbent Lynn Bennett. Brandt also currently works for the Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission, was also named Miss Charleston America 2020. As if that wasn't enough, she has also led food distributions at the Pink House Neighborhood Resource Center. She's a team leader with the Charleston Area Justin Ministry, and she serves on her son's school board. She graduated from Towson University in Maryland with a degree in environmental science and a minor in meteorology. She will focus her legislative efforts on challenges facing West Ashley and much of the greater Charleston area, for that matter. Things like traffic, flooding, and school buses for public charter schools. We're going to dive into that and everything else in this interview. Before we get to that, just a quick little recap of what I've been up to here over the last week or so. My folks have been in town, and it's been great having them here visiting. We've, just been spending some time together, grabbing dinner every once in a while, going out for ice cream and all that good stuff that comes with having family in town. But for the most part, we've been laying pretty low. Not getting too crazy with it, just enjoying each other's company and just doing small things around town. One thing they did not join me on was the High Water Festival, which was held, when you hear this podcast, will now be not this past weekend, but the weekend before. It's the annual festival that Shovels and Rope puts on, and it was a blast. Sold out crowd both days. Weather was perfect. And after a 2-year hiatus, it was great to be back out at Riverfront Park and hearing some music live and just being a part of a crowd that was excited, and everybody, was seemingly in a good mood. Sometimes you go to concerts and the crowd isn't the best. Like, everybody I ran into was just in a good mood. There were no drunken fights or people passed out or anything ridiculous. It was just a great vibe the whole weekend. Some amazing performances, including Jack White, of course, was the big one that everybody wanted to see. My Morning Jacket, Old Crow Medicine Show, Modest Mouse, and so many more. Mavis Staples was amazing. She is 82 years old, has been performing for 70 years. She was originally part of a family group that was pretty big in the 60s and early 70s, and before striking out on her own. She is literally a living legend. She is a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and just give her a little Google after and see her career. There's a lot that you, and myself included, I just wasn't familiar with all the things she had her hands on, and what she was involved with, certain songs and artists, and it's pretty incredible. So had an amazing time, and I can't wait to see, it's already a year away, but can't wait to see what next year's lineup will be. And, just, it was so great to be back out. And again, I've said this on previous podcasts, but each time I go to an event or do something, things are starting to feel more and more normal, as it were. So that was pretty great. Other than that, like I said, been kind of laying low with the family, just hanging out, but there are more events that are coming back, and I'm sure I'll have more to report on in future episodes. And so that's what's going on in Holy City Centerland. But now let's get to what everyone's here for, this week's interview. And I can't wait for you all to hear this discussion with Michelle Brandt. Joining me now is Michelle Brandt, who is running for the District 114 seat in the South Carolina State Legislature. She is hoping to unseat the current incumbent for that seat, and I'm so excited to speak with her today. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on Holy City Center Radio.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be interviewed by you.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you. Known about your campaign for a few months now, and just excited to learn a little bit more and help the people listening learn a little bit more about a new candidate here in town. But before we dive into the politics and all that, if you could just provide a little background about yourself, who you are, whether you were born in Charleston or what brought you here, and, kind of what you do, everything leading up until when you decide to run.
Okay, well, I moved here from the Maryland, D.C. area about 7 years ago. I visited in think 2011, and I fell in love with Charleston. And originally, though, I'm an Army brat, so I really don't really claim any place as home prior to Charleston. I was born in Texas.
Okay, gotcha.
And I traveled around with my family, and we even lived in Germany for a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's cool being an Army brat. You know, I do envy those who've lived in one place for a long time, have their friends, and they know the town like the back of their hand. But I also had the wonderful opportunity to meet all kinds of different people and see parts of the world that maybe some people might not ever see. So I'm very fortunate in that. But let's see, you want to know just about me. Well, I'm married to my husband, Justin. We've been married for 7 years. We have 2 children. Belle is 4 and Theodore is 7.
Oh.
Prior to moving to Charleston, I worked for the MITRE Corporation as an environmental health and safety specialist in McLean, Virginia. But when we got pregnant with our son, you know, I was just like, you know, I really don't think that I want to raise a family here in the DC area. Like, there's so much traffic, and you know, I really just kind of wanted to go someplace where things were moved a little bit slower, not as crowded. And so we came here, and we love it here, and I want to stay here like forever.
I hear you there. Absolutely.
Yes, it's such a beautiful place.
It is.
With amazing people and history, and but I went to Towson University, which is in Towson, Maryland. And I majored in environmental science. So I definitely don't have a traditional political background by any means. After we moved to Charleston, I became a stay-at-home mom, and I really got connected to the community and the church we were attending at the time, and really got plugged in that way. And that's how I really grew to love this place and the people. And I have a heart for service. So it just like seems natural to me, especially after watching my father serve in the military for his career. It's just like we have that family legacy of serving people. And something fun about me is I like to do pageants as a hobby, and I just won recently, last weekend, the title of Mrs. South Carolina Cosmos.
Well, nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my second pageant I've ever done. I didn't even know married women could compete until I met a woman who did it. And I was like, oh, we can do this? They're like, yeah. And pageants and politics kind of go hand in hand. They're very similar. So
yeah, you know what? I didn't even think about that, but you're probably right. There are definitely some similarities there.
Yep. You have to interview, you know, you have to be good at public speaking, you have to have good presence and confidence. And that's like what I love most about doing pageants, is like it helps me develop, I think, in building that self-confidence and just getting better about knowing who I am and presenting myself authentically to others.
Nice.
And it's like, it's fun to just dress up and like, you know, put on some beautiful earrings and a pretty dress. And, like,
sure,
strut.
Of course. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, exactly. It's fun as well. There's nothing wrong with having some fun while also, you know, being able to, like you said, demonstrate public speaking or talents or whatever it may be, answering questions on the fly, and not like you said, not too different from politics.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned in that background, you know, community service and things like that, and I mentioned up at the top before I got you on the phone that you've done some things like food distributions. You're team leader with the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, and you're also on your son's school board, correct?
Yes, I do all of that. Sometimes it's a lot. I got appointed last year to be a commissioner of Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission. So I do a lot of stuff that I don't get paid for, but I love it. I love to serve. Like, I just can't be still.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And it seems that way. You've got tons on your plate, and why not add, running for office onto that? I'm sure you're not already too busy to add that, a very time-consuming project, but it will be serving other people, which makes sense why you were interested in it, because being in politics is serving your community. Is that one of the factors that made you decide to run for office?
Well, I have like a story, if you don't mind me
No, please.
sharing. So in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, I was in quarantine like everyone else, and I wanted to help the people around me. So I got online and I found that Charleston Hope was doing food distributions downtown. So I signed up and I ended up going downtown to help. And I met this gentleman who approached me. He asked me for food. I gave him some groceries, but I asked if he would like some frozen eggs, but he declined because he didn't own a refrigerator. And like, I ended up calling my husband to see if we could try to help him in some way, but we didn't have the resources. And by the time I got back to the man, he had already left. And that moment was like, I think a pivotal moment in my journey, because I looked at not only him, but all the people in that area, and people in general who don't have electricity or things like refrigerators. And I was like, you know what? I want to do something about it. And so that's when I joined the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. And I started going to county council meetings for the first time and city council meetings. And I was just like blown away by what I saw. I was like, wow, like our elected officials are just everyday people like you and me. I always had this thought that you had to be really, really smart and know everything to be a public servant, but that's not true.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I actually know a little bit more than him and him and him and him. I was like, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it. And I felt like that's the direction where God was pulling me. And so I was like, okay, like this is crazy, but I'm going to run. So I called up the Charleston County Democrats and I was like, hey, my name's Michelle. I'm running for office, but what should I run for? Like, what can I do? And they were like, well, there's an opening for the state house. What do you think? And so I Googled who was in the seat, and I saw Lynn Bennett on all that she was. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely doing this. I'm going to run against her. And that's kind of how I got involved in politics.
You mentioned that a lot of people kind of have misconceptions about what you need to have as a background or who you have to be as a person to run for office. But as we've learned, at least in my opinion, especially these last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, how important these, down ballot or state level, and even now school boards and stuff, how important they are, to vote in good people. And like you said, that when it came to this, not as many people go vote for these types of offices as, presidential elections, which makes sense. Of course, those are the big things. But we're learning how important it is to have, good people in these positions, because a lot of people, like you said, they kind of just run on a whim, and they may not have the politics background, but they have really good ideas for, their community and things. And so, you don't need to have this long political career. In some ways, it's probably better coming in fresh. You can have a whole new outlook on, what can and can't be done, and you're not, beholden to any particular group or anything like that.
Exactly. Yep.
So I think for sure that makes sense. I've, getting more involved in local politics myself, that's what I've learned is these are important races, and it's important to get, folks like yourself, the voices out there so people can learn more. So you decided to run. You kind of gave us this background as to why you want to help people and be of service. Obviously, there's tons of things that you could work on, but what issues are you most focused on? What do you think is the most important as you look into taking the District 114 seat?
Well, one of the issues that's really close to my heart is affordable housing and the lack of it. So that's one of the things I would really want to work to change. And there was an article that just came out about how Charleston is like one of the most one of the hardest places to find at some place affordable to live.
Yes, that's right.
And I myself am a renter. And my husband and I, we were thinking we weren't going to be able to stay where we are in Charleston because we couldn't afford anything. By the grace of God, we were able to find a place, but year to year, we're definitely concerned about, we'll be able to stay until we're ready to purchase a home.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think what exactly that article was, but it was in the Post and Courier for those who are wondering what we're referencing. It was basically, I think it was Charleston County, not necessarily the city, but Charleston County is one of the most expensive counties, to live in, is what the article was. And I'll find it and put it in the show notes so people can read it. But yeah, affordable housing has certainly been a big concern down here. So I'm glad that's one of your, big issues that you're most focused on. Outside of that, I think one of your first press releases that I received, you also talked about things that are also talked about a lot: traffic, flooding, things of that nature as well.
Yes. I'm also running to improve our schools. I've noticed, I'm sure everyone has, the racial disparity that we have in the schools here in Charleston. And I don't claim to be an education policy expert, but I think something that I've just noticed in my own experience is one way to improve things, maybe lessen that racial disparity, is maybe by having funding for public school buses, so that, if we're going to do school choice here in the Low Country, let's just make it more accessible for everyone. Because you find that not everyone has a car, not everyone can or has a job that would allow them to drive their kids to and from a certain school.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's just an idea that I have that I would like to work on in the State House. But I'm also running to hopefully mitigate flooding. And I think that we need more green infrastructure to help with that. And also to have better regulations on overdevelopment of certain parts. And also I want to secure funding to support the seawall around the city of Charleston. That wall is being built to protect the city from storm surge. And many people in my district are actually employed by NUSC or somewhere downtown. And there's a lot of historical significance and artifacts there that also should be protected from the storm surge. So I'd love to support protecting that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that too, because climate change and storm surges and flooding in Charleston is going to cause so many issues. And as I'm sure you're well aware, since this is you're running for office now, it seems even on the state level, people, including the person you're running against, tend to get bogged down in whatever the national cause of the week is, or whatever's being talked about on cable news and things like that. So while Lynn Bennett, who, for those listening, was someone who bought into the whole QAnon conspiracy thing, even though after she got questioned about it, she claimed she didn't really support it anymore, even though she did for a long time. So she was doing that. And now she recently added an amendment to the one of these anti-truth bills for teaching in schools, no critical race theory and no 1619 project in schools. She's, while she's getting involved in all those things, you're not hearing much about the issues you're talking about, flooding and schools and stuff like that. So not that these big national issues aren't important and some of these things won't be in your purview, but it's nice to hear you talking about, well, this is what I want to do in the Charleston level, and this is what I think is important. Again, I'm sure you'll weigh in on national things if you make office, and some of those things will be important, but it's good to hear that you're focused on what you can do for the folks, here in the Charleston area.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what has been the reception, to your campaign so far? People been supportive? Have they agreed when you said hey, this is what I want to focus on, or has everything been going well so far?
Well, in the beginning, it was a little, it was a bit of a challenge. The perception was definitely mixed in the beginning. I think that anytime you have somebody out of nowhere show up and say they want to run, there's a lot of skepticism.
Sure.
Okay, is this person serious? Are they legit? And, I had some of that, but I think that as I've navigated running a campaign for the first time, and they've seen how serious I am and how far I've come, and I've even outraised my incumbent with fundraising dollars, which I think is pretty amazing for a first-time candidate. So definitely now, as I've come along and stuck with it, the perception has been overwhelmingly positive. And I'm so grateful to everyone that has been so supportive, people that have donated or just left a really sweet, encouraging comment. It all means so much to me, and like, it's going to help me keep going. And yeah, like it's been really good. I think overall it's been really great.
That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, you mentioned outraising Bennett. You for quarter one, I think it turned out to be just over $4,000 more than what she had raised. And like you said, I mean, it's always great when you're outraising whoever you're running against. But for you being a first time candidate and her being a 3-term incumbent, that's really impressive. So if you were having a hard time, like you said at the very beginning, convincing people of who you are and what you're running from, it seems like people have bought into it, because that's really impressive when a first-time candidate can outraise someone who's been in office that long.
Yes, and I'm so proud of all the hard work I've been doing. And I've even secured some endorsements too along the way that I think have also helped get people to start paying more attention to my race and to me as a candidate.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually wanted to ask you, I know of 2, you've been endorsed by Run for Something as well as the Elect Black Women PAC. I believe there may be more, but regardless of how many of these endorsements you've gotten, what do they mean to you in your campaign? How have they helped?
Well, they're both really amazing. Run for Something is a national organization that endorses young candidates under the age of 40. And so I will never forget the day that I got that email saying they're endorsing my campaign. I cried. I was just so elated, because running for office is definitely a mental game.
Sure,
more than anything else. And I struggle with self-doubt at times. And so when I saw that these group of people, believed in what I'm doing in my cause, I was just like overjoyed. And they shared my Act Blue donation link on their site, and people from all over the country have been contributing to my campaign. And that has been like just so incredible. I was just like, wow, to be a part of this an impressive network of progressive candidates, and also just people who support democratic ideals. Like, it's just been incredible. And then Elect Black Women, they're relatively new, but they're also a national organization. And of course they endorse Black, Democratic candidates. And that was really cool to get that endorsement in Black History Month.
Yeah, right.
Yes, and they have been so supportive. The executive director of that PAC, she's also running herself for office. So it's just been really cool to just get in touch with other Black women who are running all over the country, and for us to just share our stories and maybe some struggles that we have that are unique to us in our situation. It's just been nice just to know that I'm not alone. And those of both endorsements have come with discounts on different services and things that candidates need to run, if you need text messaging services or something like that, which is just really nice to just have that support and have a place to go when you have questions. Hopefully there will be more endorsements to come. I've been applying to them left and right. It's kind of like applying for scholarships for college.
I was about to say, it sounds like college. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, there's so many out there that I've just been applying to everything I can get my hands on that, as long as I align with what they're about,
sure, of course, yeah.
I'll apply. But I've had more interviews, but no other official endorsements yet. But I will definitely be announcing those as they come.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'll be sure to share on my end as well. And, kind of, it's related to these endorsements because, like you said, that helps bring in money, from all over the country for people who believe in your campaign. But going back in tying, we're going to tie into that, but also talking about how you outraised Lynn Bennett. Something that I thought was really interesting was the fact that the average donation to your campaign was over $100 less than the average donation to hers. So you have over $100 less per person, but you're outraising her by $4,000. So that means a lot more people have donated to your campaign, even though they may not have the same, disposable income to donate. And I'm sure that those endorsements have helped with that. So that's really impressive too. That means there's a lot of people who are trying to help in any way they can.
Yes, like I don't have a network of friends who've gone to Harvard, shout out to Harvard, no shade there.
No,
but
of course. Yeah.
My friends, they're all stay-at-home moms. They're all like, working class people. And, I'm just so grateful for what they have been able to give. Like getting $25 from a friend who I know that doesn't have that much means so much more than getting $100 from a stranger. Now, don't get me wrong. Money is money.
Yeah, of course.
I need lots of it. Please donate, whoever is listening. But it just means so much to me when I see people that may not have a lot of means, like give what they can to help support.
Yeah, it means they really believe in what you're doing and think that you're the right person to represent them. So, that's got to feel great. And that's a good sign for your campaign for sure. Even though we're not at the end at this moment, and this is usually what I would ask at the end, it's just a nice segue. You mentioned supporting and donations. For anyone who wants to support your campaign or donate, what are the best ways for them to do that?
The best way to do that is to go to my website. It's www.michelle4sc.com, and 4 is spelled FOR. Go there, click on the link that says donate, and it should take you to my ActBlue link. Or you could find me on ActBlue if you're familiar with that. ActBlue is like a Democratic fundraising tool that most Democratic candidates use. So you can find me on there. You just type in my name, Michelle Brandt, and you should be able to find me. But that would be the best way.
Perfect. And we'll definitely put those in the show notes too, so people can get to those quickly and easily. So we'll be sure to add those for those listening. One other question I thought of while we were talking from before, you had mentioned, in terms of like flooding and things, green infrastructure, for someone who didn't major in environmental science, I would imagine your background in that would help with things like green infrastructure and figuring out solutions to things like flooding. Is that a good assumption on my part, or am I way off?
No, that's a good assumption. Like nature is probably the best way to solve a lot of our problems. And, we as humans, I think, kind of mess things up sometimes. So when I say green infrastructure, I mean like increasing our tree canopy, like planting more trees and finding and utilizing natural ways of mitigating flooding and working with the land instead of against it. I'm not saying that we can do that for all cases of flooding, but I think that would be better more in the long term to utilize solutions that do incorporate more of the nature that we have around us. And with my background in environmental science, I know who to go to find solutions. I've been out of college for a while now, so it's been a minute, but I'm really great at collaborating with others, and I know who to go to when I'm out of my depth, so to speak. And there's so many wonderful organizations like I think it's called the Charleston Climate Coalition here.
Yes. Yeah.
They know so much about climate and green infrastructure. They have wonderful ideas, and I would love to collaborate with them when it came to anything about climate change, especially flooding.
I like how you said you want to find ways to work with nature. I didn't know too much about things in relation to that. And I recently went to a TEDx talk here in Charleston. And there's a gentleman by the name of Jared Bramblett who did a whole talk on basically that. And it was the first time I'd really been presented with these ideas. And I'm like fully bought in onto these things now. And, for those who are listening, I recommend going to check it out so you can know the types of things that Michelle's talking about. But they make sense, like you said, to work with the environment instead of like kind of fighting it. I think those are some good solutions. So I wanted to put that out there for people who may not be familiar, like I wasn't. It's a great talk. The video is out there and gives you an idea of what could be implemented here in Charleston.
Also, the Dutch dialogues are a great resource as well.
Yes.
I don't know if your listeners are aware, but the Dutch came here and did a study of Charleston flooding, and they're huge proponents of working with the environment and natural flood mitigation. And that would be another great resource to check out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Because they came here to help, but as you mentioned, they in their own country have been doing this for a long time and have had some great solutions. And hopefully, our city will take some of those ideas from those Dutch dialogues. And I think their report or whatever is still up on the city's website. But I'll throw that in the show links too. We'll make sure everybody has the resources to check all these things out. But no, you're right. It's really fascinating, and I think more people need to be aware of those, because I think those will be great ideas for the future, especially places like Charleston, where flooding is not going to get better anytime soon, and we need to figure this stuff out for sure. So we've kind of gone over general things. We've dove in a little bit. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important, or that you want to just hammer home? Any issue or anything at all that you just want voters to know that we didn't cover so far in this interview?
Well, I'd love your listeners to just know that I'm not an expert on everything, but I am dedicated to finding solutions and working with others to bring the changes that we need to make Charleston and Charleston City, and also the Charleston area, the Low Country, and the state of South Carolina a better place for everyone. And I would love people to know that I want to be accessible. And so if there's ever anyone who has a question, feel free to reach out. I'm a regular person. I'm very busy, but this is what I want to do. So I will make time to talk with the people that I'm going to be representing in office one day. And I just know that a lot of politicians, they're not always as accessible. And that's something very important to me that I want everyone to know, that in order to make change, you can't assume that you know everything. You have to listen to the people. You got to check in from time to time, make sure that you're meeting their needs. We need more of that. And I also now since running, I have a passion for encouraging young people, women, and minorities to run for office themselves, or just get involved civically in your city councils, county councils. Start paying attention, get involved. Just go to one.
Absolutely.
Seriously, local elections matter. And, you got to be involved if you want to make a difference. Complaining on Twitter is not going to get anything done. You need to actually get involved and make changes.
No, well said. And you're right. Well, number one, I want to hammer home what you said. Representation matters. So it's great that we're having more people run for office. So these seats, will look more like our community looks.
Yep.
And also getting involved no matter your age or background, because like I mentioned earlier, these local elections and things that you kind of didn't put too much thought into, we're seeing every year more and more how important these are, and all these changes that are being made that maybe we weren't prepared for because we didn't really know who we were voting for. So no, I think that was well said and super important. And I thank you so much for joining me today. We went over how to support your campaign, your website. You can donate through Act Blue. Those links will be in the show notes. Yeah, I think this was great to hear what your plans are, why you decided to run. And I think people enjoy hearing your story. And I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. This was such a pleasure to be part of the Holy City Center.
I appreciate it. And best of luck on the campaign. And we'll be sure to keep me posted on everything so I can pass it on to the listeners.
Okay, I definitely will.
Thank you so much to Michelle Brandt for speaking with me today. Always great to hear a first-time candidate come on and just, they don't sound like that typical politician, which is a good thing. You know, they're, like she said multiple times, she's just a regular person who's trying to get her foot in the door for politics. And you know, being on the state level is the best way to do that. And yeah, she's just a real person who wants to do good in the community. And I mean, how could you, regardless of your political affiliation, how could you not like that? You know, that's what politics should be. Are people just trying to do good and help as many people as they can. Obviously, as you start going down the line, there'll be some differences in ways to do things. But you know, just on that base level, I love hearing people who feel moved to get involved like that. So yes, thank you to Michelle for coming on today. Great interview, and love talking to her. And thank you to all of you for listening. A great reminder, even if you can't vote for Michelle, voting is super important. Be sure to check your registration. You can do that at scvotes.org. Make sure that you are registered. Make sure you know your polling places and all that good stuff to prepare you for when it is finally time to vote. These elections, as we said several times, are so important, as we are seeing with all these different things going on in the news and on school boards. And it's becoming more and more important to pay attention to the folks on these ballots. So that's my soapbox, and I am now off it. Thank you again for listening. Thank you to Tyler Bood for providing the music in each and every episode. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins for producing each and every episode. She is with LMC Sound System, as well as FMB Radio, a local podcast. Well, I should say it's based locally, but talks about the food and bev industry all over. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. And if you haven't, please rate and review this podcast. It helps. Please share any way you can. I really appreciate your support. You can also go to patreon.com/Holy City Center. I was getting ahead of myself. You can also buy merch at holycitycenter.com/shop. And as always, you know, liking, sharing, retweeting, all that good stuff helps out as well. So if you can't donate or purchase things, so many ways that you can help me and my mission here with Holy City Center, and I appreciate all of it. Until then, till the next time I speak with you, about a week from today, we'll have some more good episodes for you. Tons of awesome interviews lined up. But until that time, I say goodbye to you, and good night, and good luck.